Ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mac Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
If you are just tuning in, welcome to the Sheila Mac Show. This is Sheila Mac, your host, and you are tuning in to NBC's Sheila Mac Show right here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and today I'd like to give a special thank you and shout out to Mel Science for today's episode sponsorship. Now, this episode is all about parenting and education for our children. So one of the things that I loved about Mel Science is that Mel Science is a subscription service that offers monthly science boxes which combine hands-on experiments with VR and AR technology to engage kids in studying science. They are breaking the stereotype that science is boring, difficult, and only for certain types of people. Mel Science strives to make serious science accessible, interesting, and cool for all. So now, personally, I actually did order and have two different science kits that we got to learn with at home. And I was really impressed. Now, I have raised 6 children of my own, and I also was a Montessori teacher for many years. I do highly recommend this program, and I only wish that I knew about Mel Science when my little ones that are now grown were little, so this is now for grandchildren. So Mel Kids is a program that's available for children ages 5 to 9 plus. They have 18 STEM do-it-yourself projects, new topics every month delivered to your door, yet it's not, parents, don't worry, it is not do-it-yourself. It is actually augmented reality science lessons free in the Mel Kids app, and there's free online lessons with professional science teachers. Your children will be learning through story time, storytelling, and it'll be fun. So that's what I love the most about it. Now, as your children progress, there is Mel Physics, and that's for ages 8 to 14. There's 18 exciting physics sets, 2 to 3 new experiments in each box with a new physics topic every month. Free VR lessons in the Mel VR app that takes learning to a whole new level, and a free online lesson with a professional science teacher or teachers. And then as you move on, Mel Chemistry is for ages 10 to 16 plus. There's a free starter kit with a free VR headset that comes with your first box, and it is a monthly prepaid subscription. There are 24 chemistry sets, free VR lessons in the Mel Chemistry app, and 2 to 3 new experiments on a new chemistry topic every month. So you can, no matter what your child's age is, you can start plugging science into your routine. If you are homeschooling right now, I can't recommend this enough for homeschooling parents. And also, this is a wonderful gift, grandparents. If you want to give a gift that keeps giving every month, and will bring so much education to your child, this is something I do highly recommend. Now, if you would like to order, you can go to melscience.com. And with that, right now, anybody tuning in, just use the code Sheila, capital all caps, SHEILA, and you will receive 60% off your first month of the Mel Science. And for those tuning in, this is a special episode. So today we have an author that writes books about entrepreneurship, and we'll be learning more about how to educate our children in entrepreneurship. And later on in the show, I will share about the Mel Science giveaway, so your children and family will have the option of winning a Mel Science kit as well. All right, so tune in for that, and now we're going to get started. Today we have a very special guest. We have Timmy Bauer. He is the author and illustrator of many children's books, including Lucas the Dinosaur Entrepreneur, Billy the Dragon, and Harper Hears No, and a whole bunch more. He is the founder of Dinosaur House, a company that makes kids' books for entrepreneurs. He also hosts a variety of podcasts such as The Literacy Advocate, B2B Growth, The Purpose-Driven Entrepreneur, Writing Better, and The Up-and-Coming Illustrator. Timmy's contributing writer-artist for the Children's Writers Guild magazine. While the kids' books author career was taking off, Timmy was also a Disney actor. I love it.
Man, you're reading the whole thing.
Yes, and Timmy's dream is to make books that ignite a love for reading in kids while inspiring them to think about grown-up topics like entrepreneurship, finance, and personal values. Outstanding. Well, welcome to the show, Timmy.
Thank you so much for having me, Sheila. I'm excited to talk to you.
Now, this show actually started off when I was interviewed by someone else on this network, and that was about my best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And this last 12 months, globally, we have had every situation show up. And so I like to have, maybe if you could share to the listeners a time in your business or personal life where you hit a tough situation and how you got back on track.
Sure. Okay. So I have two that jump out, and I'll just share both of them, and you can tell me which one you find more interesting or which one you'd rather talk about. But two things that have happened. So 2019, I was touring as a kids book author. I've been touring. I decided I wanted to be a kids book author professionally a long time ago. Went out and finally just started in 2014 and have been busting my butt to try to get to a place where I can fully support myself on money that I'm making as a kids book author. It's taken a lot of work. I finally got there in 2019 when I realized, oh, wait a second. If I'm just always traveling and am visiting elementary schools literally every day, I can make a full-time living as a kids book author. So that's what I was doing. I was just making trips all over the US, visiting elementary schools, and I'd have a whole routine that I put together to get parents to notice me and to take an interest and see if they want to buy my books. And it was going really well. I quit my jobs and I was like, yes, this is working. I was so excited. And then surprise, surprise. I mean, COVID hits, and so early 2020, I was on tour. And I was like, that's when we were all kind of like, it was over in China, and we're like, what's going to happen? Is it coming to the US? And nobody really knows for sure. And one of the first groups to react were like schools when it came to guest visitors. All of a sudden, every school is like, no more guest visitors. And so they're just, my tour just gets wiped off the table. And I have to go home with no way of making money. Well, I mean, I went back to my old job and just begged if they could take me back. But yeah, so I spent all of 2020 working at my old job, which I was a writer for a media company, and working on trying to crack the question of like, how can I make money as a kids book author again? Because that's what I love. So that's one. Okay, that's one in the professional life. And then another one that kind of is both the professional life and the personal life is in early 2019. My wife left me. I was married for 6 years. My wife went and took a job on Disney Cruise Line, and a couple months later told me that she didn't want to be married to me anymore. And
Hmm.
that was a huge shock for me because man, it's going to be hard to talk about, but if you want to talk about it, I'm a pretty transparent person.
Wow. Hmm.
Yeah, that was a huge hit. I had no idea that she was so miserable.
Hmm.
And I mean, I knew that we had problems, but I had no idea that she was as miserable as she was. And I just, to me, the thought of divorce was next to the thought of death. It was like, yeah, this is one way that my life could end, and then this is the other way that my life could end.
Yes. And there's so many people that have gone through a divorce or had a relationship situation that hit them really hard. And when you go through something like that, it affects every single other area of your life. It's not just your relationship. It affects, because you have common friends, it affects your finances, it affects every
Yes.
single thing. I have a whole chapter on that in my book, and then special gifts for people that are going through that and free courses and things, because it is such a tough journey. And sometimes for whatever reason, one person or the other isn't aligned. It's really not a representation of you or that other person. It just is what it is. And when you get to the point where you're able to know that something better will show up that's more aligned for you, that's okay. But it takes a while. How long did it take you to rebuild after going through that process?
Yeah. So it was an interesting time because um, from 2014 to 2018, I'm just busting my butt trying to figure out how to make being a kids book author a full-time thing. I'm working for Disney as a performer all through this time. And I just keep hitting these like little wins where it's like, oh, I went and I toured this area, and oh, if I line up my tour dates with their book fairs, I make more money that way, and just like just discovering hacks, that worked. But then in 2019, she had left. And at first, it was just she was leaving to go take a job that would have had her traveling, and we would have seen each other, weekly, but just a couple of days a week. But all that time away, I fill the time with traveling, and all of a sudden, I get discovered by a little network of schools in Miami, and they just start telling all their principals about all the principals in that network about me, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So and right around that same time is when she told me that she didn't want to be married to me anymore. So I am simultaneously experiencing this soaring off of my entrepreneurial self into success, while personally I feel like I am shattered. And it was just a weird time because I'm literally like going into elementary schools to perform and read for the kids and do all the stuff that I do at the schools. And then as soon as I come away from that, I'm basically a crying, shattered mess.
Mhm, mhm. Wow. And
Yeah,
that
it was a dark time.
sounds to me like that was your therapy. That was a lot of us are guilty. I know I was too, of work therapy, or
Yeah,
where you can put all your efforts and energy into something where you don't have to think about what else is going on.
yeah,
Uh, and you don't have to grieve over whatever. You can just focus on the good and helping others. And that's beautiful. And then you have your time to heal when you're not doing that. And it's like it gives you little breaks from the healing process.
yeah. I would say for me, it was more a distraction than it was therapy. But one thing that was nice is that all the touring was constantly putting me in different locations.
Yeah.
And there was one tour that I did where I toured Arkansas, and I just made a point that after every school visit, I would go off into nature and just pray.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh, I spent so many days climbing mountains and crying and talking to God.
Nice. Yes. And that, we all need that in our life, and that's okay. I think that for those listening in, if you have gone through a tough situation or are currently going through a tough situation, let that be okay. That time and space, sometimes going in nature or finding whatever that is for you, whether it's yoga, nature, singing, whatever, and have that time to process, to heal, and also to think about your next steps. Because a lot of times when we're in a place of hurt or we want to be distracted, we may overspend, or we may make decisions that are based on our emotions versus based on the decisions that we really need to make that make sense. So
I would say I made a lot of decisions based on emotions.
Yes.
In 2019, I was making a lot of money and being broke the whole time.
Yes, that happens. And it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire. This happens to anybody going through a situation like that. It's the same story.
Yeah.
It's a universal thing.
and I would say I would put a caveat around making a lot of money. I guess what I mean by that is it was becoming the most well-paid job that I've ever had. But so this may surprise some folks. Disney does not pay very well its performers. So please don't think that I was making a lot of money. But it was becoming the most well-paid job that I'd ever had. And I was able to like eat more than ramen and eggs, which is what I'd mostly been surviving on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes.
But also have money for plenty of bad decisions.
Right.
I drank a lot of alcohol in 2019. There's this Bible verse. I'm a Christian, by the way, so you're probably going to hear this in the conversation quite a bit. But I was going through just a crazy up and down emotions and spirituality and everything. There's this Bible verse, and I would offend my Christian friends whenever I would share it, but it says, give wine to the one who is sorrowing and strong drink to the one who feels ready to die. And I would say, hey, I'm just applying the Bible to my life right now.
Good use of it. Now that can be applied to anything. And when you think about any religious studies, we can apply it to our own, what serves us. But I know that you knew inside and your friends knew, and you have a knowing that it's like, okay, but yeah, really. And it's really not the case. But
yeah, I knew it needed. I knew that I knew that plenty of the decisions that I was making weren't healthy, but I was in such a place emotionally. I don't know too much about your personal life, Sheila, and I can't wait to dig into it with you on the Purpose-Driven Entrepreneur. But I would assume that you've gone through some serious pain in your life if this is the show that you've decided to make. Mm-hmm. And you can probably remember there's no. I don't want to assume what it was like for you, but what it was like for me was there was no room for making wise decisions. Yeah. There was room for surviving and just trying to address the pain. And then sometimes just trying to feel the pain, because there was a good while where I just felt like I was going numb.
Very, very normal and very much a part of that process, the grieving process, very much so. And the reason I wrote the book and the reason I have this show is to help people when they're going through those points in life, whether it's divorce, loss of a loved one, dealing with a career switch or shift like we've all had this last year, whatever it is, reinventing yourself, where you have to walk down a different road and go through this process alone. And I don't want people to feel alone, and that there are so many ways to get back on track. So like I created this method that I use to get myself back on track when my house burned down in 2017, the Ventura fires. And I had just finished traveling for 7 years straight, had a great time, and did a whole bunch of personal development fun and worked on the road doing events, and then lost my house, my cat, and my car all in a few days.
Wow.
And it was, what do I do? And what I did to get back on track was I sat down and I wrote out the formula of what I always do. And it was kind of what I would want to tell my best friend going through something.
Oh man, that yeah. That reminds me of something that I heard when I was going through this, which was and I never heard. I think I probably heard it before, but I had never done it before.
Mhm.
And there's this podcast that I was listening to where the guys are at one point they were talking about an exercise that you can go through if you have a lot of self-doubt, or if you just think very low of yourself. And it's, you look in the mirror and you talk to yourself like you're not you. Like you talk to yourself like you're your friend. And so you don't use I language, you use you language. Like I literally look at myself. It sounds so weird. And for me, it was just the strangest thing in the world to start with. But I would look at myself in the mirror and I would just be like, okay, Timmy, and then I would just start talking.
Nice.
And at first it felt so weird, but it was surprisingly healing.
Wow, listeners, that is a beautiful application. If you for yourself or someone going through something, to go to the mirror and love yourself and look at yourself as if you are your best friend or your closest sister, parent, whatever, and start giving yourself the advice you need to hear and to love in a beautiful way. I think a lot of times we have a lot of negative self-talk that happens, that may be a voice from maybe a parent or a teacher or something from the past, that hopefully your amazing books erase that or stop that in their tracks, so that we don't continue that pattern. But it does tend to happen, and you hear these other voices, and it's like, well, that's not, I would never speak that way to my best friend. Wait a minute.
Yeah. I'm working on a kid's book right now called it's called A Picture Book About Rejection. And it's inspired by my experience. And it's literally meant to try to get across to a kid the things that I needed to tell myself when I was going through this. And also the exercise of looking at yourself in the mirror. And I say in the book, I'm like, I know this sounds super weird. It was really weird when I did it.
That is so beautiful. And now, do you have children?
No. And I actually don't know that I ever plan on having kids. But for whatever reason, ever since I was a kid, I knew that I wanted to be a kid's book author.
Wow. Yes, because I can just totally feel how good you are with kids, and looking at some of the books that you wrote. I have 6 children. They're all grown. I adopted 3 are mine. They're all mine, right? And those books are exactly what's needed and what I would want my children to read.
What made you decide to adopt?
That's a good question. So for me, I was in a very abusive situation growing up, and my mother told me to leave home because it was so dangerous, so much, broken bones and terrible things. So I left. They went from home to home, different relatives my mother was staying with. And so I left, and I was homeless from 10 to 13 and a half. Then I found foster care. I emancipated at 15. I became a mentor. I ran gift stores that created training programs for kids in foster care. And when I had my first child, I was told I couldn't have any more. And so I wanted more. And so then I did foster to adopt and had 3. Then, awesome. How interesting these things, this was a soul contract, a God-guided thing, perhaps, that then I had my last 2 birth children that were supposed to be impossible. And so that happened. And it's something that's always been in my heart to do. My daughter actually is a social worker with a girls' home now that helps young teenage girls that have babies already. And she's their counselor, and she's only in her early 20s. And so it's something that in our family is just part of what we do to give back. And it's really important to us.
I love it. I don't know if I will adopt, but I have said before, when people have asked me if I plan on having kids, I'm like, well, there's already a lot of kids in the world. I don't know that I really need to add any more. And for whatever reason, it's offensive to people, but to me, it just seems kind of logical.
Yes. And it's funny because I have, like, all these kids that I have, they're so diverse and different, the little rainbow of children that I have. And they're a lot of them are kind of leaning toward that. And I say, whatever form that takes in your life, whether you are adopting, fostering, just through your books, helping with other children, it's whatever comes to you that's right will be right. And it
Yeah.
will be perfect, and it will show up in perfect time. It may change. And whatever it is, like I say, as I haven't had any grandchildren, they're all grown. I'm like, hey, what's up? But it's okay. However they show up, it's all good. And if they don't, that's okay, because there's so many to help and be involved with on this planet. And it really is. Those children that I fostered to adopt are the same as my children. As
Yeah.
far, I really believe it was a guided situation. It was something that was in the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, again, as a Christian, that I just believe that that's the heart of God, that he wants his heart is for adoption. So whatever I do with my life, whether I adopt myself or I just do something to impact the kids that are in the world right now that don't have parents, I just believe there's not really a higher mission that somebody could devote their life to.
Yes. Now, do you have any books in the works or ways that you're helping children as far as dealing with crazy COVID?
I thought about it. I actually submitted one to an agent, and she said that the thing about COVID is it's evolving so fast that a publisher is not super likely to pick up a book that addresses it in the way that it is right now. So I guess it would have to, that's the thing about COVID. But I mean, there's nothing really stopping me from doing it, except that I have a bunch of other books in the works. But I did tentatively write one out that was just like, why do we have to stay home all the time?
Yeah.
I thought that'd be a good title for a book, because it's probably how kids are feeling. Depending on where you are. But I wrote it when it was pretty serious quarantine. I'm not sure where you're located, Sheila. I'm in Florida, where we basically treat the disease like it doesn't exist.
Right. Yes. And I know I have a couple of homes. So one's in California, which is very strict, and the other is in Las Vegas, which is less strict. But the schools are mostly still closed unless some private schools are allowed to be open. It's kind of weird. So there are a lot of children that don't get a lot of outside. You don't get to go out and play. You don't get to do much. And it's real. I think it's really strict. When I go home to California, it's ridiculous. It is so strict. And it's hard on the kids. It's hard on everyone. The children feel this. They feel it. And I feel that as parents, adults, people in children's lives, that the energy we bring, how we show up, just think about if you're on a plane and the stewardess looks scared, you're going to be scared.
Yeah.
Even if you're an adult. This is just the truth, right? So I think the same thing. We need to really show up in strength, in agreement. If you're, partners, married, co-parenting, however you're doing that, maybe you have relatives that agree differently, have an agreement, a discussion about what gets talked about around the kids or how things are presented, so you're on a common ground, so the children stay grounded and they feel safe. They can have peace. And I think learning is so much easier for kids when they feel safe. And there's some kind of, even if we don't love routines, there's some kind of a structure of knowing there's a boundary and things are going to be okay. And yes, I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's affected so many families differently. So you've got families that are now stuck together that are realizing how wonderful it is to spend so much time together. And then you got families that are now stuck together that are uncovering all the problems that they're having with each other. And fortunately for me, I haven't really had too much of that. The people that I've been stuck with for most of this have been people that I've loved hanging out with. But it's got to be really hard if you are stuck with people that you wish you didn't have to be so stuck with.
Exactly. One of the things I like to share on my show is about 211. Have you heard of the 211?
No.
Okay, so this is really important, and this isn't a sponsored thing, but this is something I always share, and that's 211 is available in every state in the United States and every province in Canada. And if you dial it or Google it, you will find a list of help
and resources, whether that's getting food on the table, helping to get a job, help for veterans, seniors, help with childcare, lots of mental health help. And you talk about living. What brought that to mind was when you talk about living in a home that maybe isn't safe, or where a situation isn't right, or somebody is dealing with an addiction, or there's an abusive situation going on. That's where you can get free help in any state or province in Canada or state in the United States. And I just feel really guided to share that, because that's something, just to post that in your work groups. If you run Zooms, share it at work. If you actually go to a physical job again, or with other parents, this is important. A lot of times people are afraid to ask for help when they need it. They won't admit it maybe to their friends. They want to save face, but maybe they really need the help this year. And that's okay. So if you do need help, ask for help when you need it, or share that with someone that comes to you. Maybe you can't help them, but just giving them that information could make all the difference this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people need community, and it's really hard to have community when there's a global pandemic,
Right.
but we need it to handle difficult problems. I mean, for me personally, when I was going through the divorce, I needed to be able to break down and cry in front of people. If I didn't have that, I don't know that I would be okay now.
Right. Yes. Now that brings us back to church, and whatever religion you are, if you're listening in or not, that's okay. But there's something about community, whether it's a church or whatever you belong to, that a lot of our communities are closed down right now. Churches, do you have churches open in Florida?
Yeah, we have churches open in Florida. And they all have different, I don't know what the current restrictions are. There's a lot of churches that are closed, and there's a few that are open, and they're open with restrictions. We've been mostly doing church at our house. But if I wasn't in a house full of people that wanted to do church at the house, I'd personally, I'd be like, okay, well, COVID aside, I need community.
Yes, and a lot of different places. I had favorite, I actually owned a church, so I have a lot going on in my life, but I also have favorite yoga studios and favorite other people's, places of worship that we would all go together in California, because it's very diverse there, and they're closed down for good because of the economy. And so it's really hard, because when you think about going through grieving, going through a divorce, anything you're going through, the healing process is in those steps, those traditions, the faith traditions of your family, of your friends, having them close together. It really helps. Now, for my family and we lost my youngest son. He was 22, and he had a heart condition called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. He passed away December 21st, 2019.
Oh, wow.
That was like, whew, COVID's nothing. That for our family, that was the hardest thing in our lives. And going through that, our having a community and a place to pray, and having people around us, surrounding us to hold us through that time, and even people sending prayers and intentions and blessings and all that, I really believe that we felt it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we felt it. And it was like when we couldn't walk, it carried us through. And
Yep.
I believe that. And now maybe you don't believe in anything and you're listening in, and this isn't a religious show, but
it can be.
scientifically now, they have studies that show, my gosh, they put intention on water or different things across, and you'll see that the structure changes. The molecular structure of water will change when you put peace and love and different things across. And there's all these scientific studies on prayer and meditation and how these things work for people and help. So we need that more than ever in this time where we have so much that's uncertain.
Yeah. For me personally, I just found, I was touring in Arkansas, and a friend of mine, she just started taking me to different churches on Sundays, because I spent 5 weeks there. And so this was at a point where my heart was pretty numb. I just couldn't really feel I was starting to get to a place where I couldn't feel anything. So I had been drinking a lot, the reason I started drinking so much was to help me just open up, because you drink enough alcohol and it's just going to come out of you, all your feelings. And so that's what I was doing at first. And then I was at a point where I was drinking so much and still going numb. And then I started doing other stuff. I would go to the gym and I would go, I'm going to work out until I can't move anymore. Just literally trying to hurt myself, so that I would be in pain, so that I would feel the sensation of feeling things. This sounds so, I don't know. I think because I'm a 3, I hear myself talking right now and I'm like, you sound like a whiny little, and we're on the air, so I can't finish that sentence.
You're so spot on, because everybody has, I would say 99.9% of the people I've worked with, and even myself going through my own divorce at one point years ago. Yeah. I might have done different things. I didn't really drink, but
I'm not advocating for alcohol, except I kind of, in a joking way, am pointing to the fact that it was part of the story. It was part of the story. But what was so crazy, where I was going with this is, so I'm in church, I would pray, there'd be, people worshiping around me, and then I would just break down and start crying. And I would start crying, and then I would start sobbing. And I would just be bent over and sobbing, and I'm going to get emotional thinking about it now. And the reason that it was so emotional for me is because when someone divorces you, they're not just saying hey, you know what? I think we should go separate ways. There might be some divorces that go that way, but not this one. It was, I don't want you anymore, kind of thing. And just the feeling of not being wanted and not being enough, and not feeling like you're worthy of anything. Not feeling like someone, will someone ever want me again? This sounds so petty to say, but in that moment, I did. I don't just want to bash her. My goal is not to get on here and bash her. But in a very low place, feeling unworthy, and not. I remember thinking I just wasn't made right. I just wasn't made the right way, because I wasn't made to be wanted. Whatever makes a person wanted, I wasn't put together that way. And just in church, worship going on all around me, I'm crying, and I'm just hearing the Lord saying to me, I like the way that I made you. And I would just break down sobbing.
Yeah.
And what's cool is when you're in a church and you break down sobbing, everybody just puts their hands on you.
Right.
So they don't think that you're a weirdo.
Right. And, in society, we kind of tend to have these crazy rules that it's not okay to have our emotions. Or, after losing my son, my daughter was like, gosh, my friends were upset with me, and because I was still grieving a month later. And it's hello, well, that's just normal. And they haven't had that experience. Her younger friends didn't lose a loved one so close. So they don't have something to really.
People were getting on your case for grieving a month later.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what?
A literal month?
Literally. And it changed. It was oh, wow, wait a minute. And it made her reassess her friendship circles a little bit, and realize some friends are, friends you work with that maybe go have fun with, but they're not really aligned on the value. And it was probably such a good thing to happen at a young age versus later, but that will happen. And so when you find your peer group and your friends, and you're in a church or wherever you're at, and you find people that support you, and that means that they give you tough love sometimes when they need to just, hold you and put their hands on you, that's one thing, but they'll also say, okay, now I'm going to help you out. Or when they see.
Dear Sheila, my mother has struggled with gambling addiction for all of my life. She has never been able to save or manage money, and she has been fired in the past for missing too much work
because she would call out sick and then go gamble instead. She has not had a job in 10 years. Now my stepdad takes care of her, but she has been running him dry. Even though he works a full-time job, they are barely able to scrape by because she gambles most of his paycheck away. She has borrowed hundreds of dollars from me and will probably never be able to pay me back. My stepdad has a problem with saying no to her. He is in his 60s and has been having heart problems, and I'm scared that if something happens to him, she will become homeless. I am not in a financial position to be able to support her. She refuses to admit she has a problem, and I am afraid she will never realize that she needs help. How can I help my mother? Signed, a concerned daughter.
Dear concerned daughter, there's a big difference between being concerned about your mother, who's now an adult, and enabling her to continue her gambling. It sounds like her husband, your stepdad, is kind of enabling her quite a bit. So the best thing for you to do is to understand that you have to have your own boundaries. Learning to have boundaries is very helpful. And then giving your stepdad and your mom the resources to help them. There's different programs such as Gamblers Anonymous and other resources out there to help your mom, but she does have to want help. And as long as your stepdad's helping her, she may just continue to spend his money or anybody else's money who's going to help her continue her habit. So she needs help finding new habits when she's ready. The best thing to do to help your mom, I would say, is start a savings program. Instead of funding your mom, because your stepdad is there helping her maybe a little bit too much at this point, start to set up a little fund where you just put so much away where if she does hit a rock bottom and gets into a help center or something like that at a certain point later in time, you're able to help when you really need to, and not in a way that would enable her, but where she could get help. And there's resources, there's Social Security, and different things. So your mom is most likely not going to become homeless. You have to decide how much you want to be involved and how much helping can hurt. Sometimes a person has to get to the point where they're willing to ask for help. And in order to do that, they're going to have to get to the point where maybe they do hit a bottom. And so that's a point where you and your stepdad could come together with maybe some other friends that your mom works with that know about her gambling, and do an intervention where you talk and discuss how you're going to loan money or not loan money, what you will help with, and how you can help her to get new healthy habits. Maybe she was a runner or a swimmer, or she was a dancer or singer. Get her back into her hobbies and let her find out that there's life outside of her addiction. I hope this helps. There's plenty of resources in my book that will help you find ways to give your mom and your stepdad more resources. Just remember that you're the healthy ones. You and your stepdad are the ones that are not in addiction right now. So stay out of enabling, and remember that being the healthy ones, don't let the person that's in the addiction drag you and your family, your stepdad, you and the rest of your loved ones down with you, because they will. They'll cost you everything if you don't take control. So remember who's in charge. You need to be in charge. You and your stepdad and all your loved ones, be in charge now so that you avoid your mom hurting herself later and hurting everybody else that she loves. If she was in her right mind, she would want you to help her and make sure that she would never hurt you or your stepdad. As always, I wish you life, love, laughter, and light.
And I have found something magical, something new that I am loving. At this stage in my life, I have been switching to the cleanest, best, healthiest makeup, shampoos, facial products. So I did find a incredible makeup line, and they have been around quite some time. It is called Beauty Counter. And if you go to beautycounter.com/Sheila Mac, SHEILAMAC, or SheilaMac.com, and at the top of the menu, look for Natural Beauty. That will bring you to the site where you can learn about the specials and give clean beauty a try. I am just loving the difference it's making in my face. And one of the things that was really bothering me was a lot of the other products. I could not find eye makeup that wasn't irritating. So this is really like one of the few products I can actually wear around my eyes. And so I'm really loving everything. It makes my skin feel really clean and fresh. And so give it a try. Again, SheilaMac.com/natural beauty to learn more.
All right, welcome to a quick talk on education strategy today. Now, there's something about education strategy today that is so important. Parents listening in, this is going to speak to you. Grandparents, this is also for you. Education happens more in the home and in the community than in the classroom so many times. And especially today where so many people don't even have a choice. They're having to homeschool, or they've chosen to homeschool due to our pandemic. So anyway, education today, one of the things that you can do as the parent leader in the home for your children, or children in your life, is to be the leader. So one of my mantras is I'm a lifetime learner and a wisdom earner. And that means that I am continually learning new things. And I do that in front of my now grown children. I have 6 beautiful children. And now that they're all grown, they are all still lifelong learners. It started at a really early age. So one of the things we did is we created a ritual at home when the children were very young, where we always had reading together. We had a reading time before bedtime. It started with before the terrible twos, even, when they were babies, but by the terrible twos, it was the way to calm the children. So we would have a reading time, a story time. We would do our faith practice, and then it would be bedtime. And it was that calming ritual that happened every evening. Later on, when I traveled and the children weren't with me, we would actually get on a call. We didn't have Skype and Zoom back then. We would get on a call and we would actually still read or talk about the day, and they would read to me if I didn't have whatever book we were reading with me, and we would have that family time. So there was a connection with learning and reading and story time and family time, and that bond, it brought something where learning became part of the family activity. It was a sense of home and peace, and I think that made a big difference for my family. And my children, although they chose to study different things and have completely different interests, I have this diverse little group of 6 children of mine, 3 adopted, 3 from birth, but they're all mine, and we're a beautiful, fun family. But reading for every single one is important to them, and learning and applying what they learn, and discussion. So we talked about things. We would talk about what's happening in school related to the stories we read, or what's happening at work now that they're older. And, we still call in and have our time in the evenings, even now that they're all grown. So that's really important.
You'll always be my baby. Parenting teenage and adult children.
And I dedicated an entire chapter in Bootstraps and Bra Straps to parenting. So get your copy today on Amazon.
Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mac's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. So if life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.SheilaMac.com today.
If you are just tuning in, this is NBC's Sheila Mac Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheila Mac,
And I have some news for you. Yes, you. I'm celebrating my 3rd year now on the station and will be expanding the show to a global network as well. You may now find the Sheila Mac Show on all major podcasting channels, and if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, all the episodes are now available for viewing there as well. And I'm asking you for a quick favor. If you like the show, please help support the spread of this reboot channel on YouTube as well. My goal is to help as many people as possible through our interesting times to rebuild, reinvent, and reboot your business and personal life. I also wanted to share a little bit more about how I got here, what I do now, and how designing a business career and life on your terms is more than possible at any age or stage in life. I am an enterprisingly forward-thinking consultant, show host, and best-selling author. But how did I get here? Well, I began my career as an entrepreneur and property investment strategist back when I was 23 years young, when I boldly quit my government job with NASA JPL to open my first of 5 large gift stores while also starting to invest in property. I got to work with some of the world's most loved companies, such as negotiations on leases with Warner Brothers and winning trips to London as the top-selling Crabtree and Evelyn provider in the U.S. for multiple years. My stores were built on heart as I gave back to the community I came from. So now, some of you know this and some of you don't know this, but as a young girl with parents who were not well enough to care for me, I was homeless at age 10, then in foster care, where it was really hard to get a job while in the system. I finally emancipated at the age of 15 to start college early. While running my stores, I worked with a government program. Back then, it was called Job Training Partnership Act, making my stores an open source training site where close to 200 at-risk youth started their careers. Yes, I began my career helping business leaders and working professionals to design a life they love where they can have success in their careers and get to the business of life. See, a funny thing happened along the way. When I first opened my gift store, it was kind of crazy because I was this young upstart. That's what a lot of the store owners called me. My first store was in Montrose, California, in this sweet little hometown shopping park with other stores and restaurants nearby. And so I was the young upstart that didn't know what she was doing. At least that's what everybody said. And I didn't really care what they said. At that age, their opinion was like, I don't really care. So that was probably a really good thing because I stayed focused on what I needed to do. And I had negotiated to lease out a 5,000 square foot gift store that needed a lot of work, and I got free rent and for about 6 months, and I had to start making the rent, which was $5,000 a month, which was a lot of money back then, $1 a square foot. And so I had to learn and relearn. I finally did hire quite soon in the game. I did hire a marketing expert, branding expert, I guess back then. And that lady really helped me to figure things out when I first started. And when you first start a business, especially when you're young, it was like I had no idea what to do, but I needed to learn because my rent was going to start coming due every month. And over that time, I started having more success. I did crazy things like stayed open until almost midnight every night, along with the restaurants who were very close to my store, while everybody else closed shop at about 5 or 6 p.m. So I was making more money from the start, and I just really, my store was to help my kids, and the products I sold was whatever the community wanted. I sold lots of things to people in the entertainment industry. I worked with cruise ships. I worked with many different people in the community. And later on, the store owners actually came to me and asked me if I would consult them and help them. I actually started buying my other buildings because I didn't like the idea of paying rent for years and years and years and not building equity. So I did get my real estate license through that and invested and bought my other 4 store buildings. And lots of the other store owners worked with me, paid me to consult and help them do what I was doing. And I didn't really even know it was called consulting. I just knew how to figure it out, I guess. And so that's how I started my career. And now, I raised 6 children, all that, and now they're grown. And so I get to come to work every day and do what I naturally do best as an enterprising and forward-thinking business leader. Through my show, courses, and live events, I guide entrepreneurs and working professionals like you through the profitable steps of building a business, creation to expansion, marketing from planning to implementation, wealth preservation through strategic planning and, yes, real estate investing, and lifestyle design so that you can earn more while getting back to the business of living your best life. So I do invite you to tune in here to KCAA Radio, and also I would really appreciate it if you went to my YouTube channel, Sheila Mac Show, and gave a subscribe and a listen to some of your favorite shows. And I do have some other exciting things, including a free gift to thank you. So if you go to www.sheilamac.com, that's SHEILAMAC, SheilaMac.com, there you can get a free gift to get started on your reboot this year. And now back to the show.